Sustainable means coming back next year. Sustainable means planning for a long horizon.
It is about what we do now should not in any way harm the possibilities of future generations.
What we need is a world where 10 billion people can enjoy sustainable prosperity. But in order to achieve it for 10 billion people, you have to change the way you do everything. You have to change how you extract materials from the earth, how you use energy to convert those materials into stuff, what you do with the stuff after you've used the stuff, how you grow food, how you use food, how you don't throw away 40% of food. So every single category of life has got to change, has to shift. We know that by 2050, we have to be producing more than twice as much food and fiber as we're producing now. How are we going to produce more fiber when we're destroying the forests, right? So we must transform everything we do and how we do it. We designed it from the beginning. We've engineered it from the beginning. We're real smart. We can go to the moon, right? We can make iPhones. We've got to re-engineer and redesign every category of life: social, economic, political.
The world doesn't need another chair, we don't need another trade fair. Design doesn't have to be a handmaiden to consumption. It can be part of the skill set that we need to reimagine the 21st century.
There were these two young Danish women who contacted me at one point, and they said, we've been commissioned to try to help Denmark figure out what to do about its economy, particularly applying design, how to leverage its design reputation from the mid-20th century, the 1950s, when everybody wanted to live in a Danish modern house and sit in Danish modern chairs lit by Danish modern lamps, is that industry is kind of stagnated. And they said, we think we want to give like an international award competition. I said, don't do that. But if you did, break all the rules. Don't have categories like automotive and product and graphics, and don't have those categories. Instead, sort of have categories that are about what people care about in their life, like their health, body, life at home, their community, work, play. Have those be the categories, your collecting categories. And I said, and don't have any criteria. Just have one challenge, and that is design that improves life. Improves life at home, improves life at work, improves life in the community. And so they're very big and fluid. And then by what they submit, let the world tell you what it means to improve life. That became Index.
At Index, we believe that the world has more than enough white teacups. Index was founded in 2001 by the Danish state and the city of Copenhagen in Denmark, with the objective of doing a world event for design, standing on the strong shoulders of design in Denmark. So we talk to people from all over the world and ask them, if we are to do a very big design gig, what should we focus on? They said, do not focus on the aesthetics of design, but focus on the power of design to improve life for people. And that's what we've been doing ever since.
In the early days, 2005 and 6, it was really about creating a mind shift. While the world's having a set of challenges that were in desperate need of being addressed. And we were just convinced that designers could make a bigger contribution than simply beautify products. And that really got us going. So imagine we would indeed get all those amazing designers dedicate a part of their time and their energy to world problems, that probably would create a much better world than we see it today.
We see design as a crucial part of any sustainable solution to global challenges, and we work to get people to understand how crucial design is. So design is everywhere. Imagine when you're in a city, you can see, of course, the houses, you can see the cars. What is also designed are all the systems. For instance, the supply systems we have, or maybe the booking system for your taxi, the software that's controlling all the red and green lights in your city. You only see the surface of design, but very often you don't see the underlying design of systems and services and processes.
I like designs that transform an industry or an economic sector by virtue of the business model in which that design exists. So like the iPod was an example. It transformed portable music. It transformed the music industry by 99 cents a tune.
Many people talk about the Sustainable Development Goals, but what is that really? That's the global framework of how we want to move the world forward. We have 17 different goals that have been decided upon in the General Assembly of the UN by 190 leaders of states from all over the world. And it's setting the targets for how we want to move forward. So we have goals concerned with zero hunger, with better health, with better education. We have goals that are concerned with life on land or sustainable cities. We even have goals that are looking into how can we make really strong institutions and how can we make partnerships to achieve these goals. I've been working with design and sustainability for 16 years. And I can tell you as a fact, it is getting better. We see new nominations coming in for Index Award from all over the world.
Index Award is split into 5 categories: body, home, work, play and learning, and community. Together, they represent human life from inside out. Body covers food, wearables, sanitation, and health. Home includes devices, appliances, living spaces, and architecture. Work spans tools and safety equipment to employment and work conditions. Play and learning includes education, games, sports, and leisure. And community covers environment to infrastructure, economy to urban planning.
My definition of design is the tangible form of a valuable idea.
The best thing for me is to see that the nominees now are what I will call more mature. Because earlier we had, great nominees, but there's something about, as a designer, more or less project that would happen and projects which are like really far out there. And I think in the beginning we had more of these projects which were great, but they were like so far off in the future. You didn't have a feeling of them having like impact now. So what I see is that we have lots of our nominees which is really almost operational. I think it's very important to Index because Index also need to show that it's feasible, this is possible. I really like the ones which I think is having an enormous impact and still being able to put through within a not so long time. And one of them is the one that cleans up the oceans, because it's such a huge problem. The thing is that it's very simple, right? It is a system of using the movements basically in the oceans to gather the plastic. So you don't need extra equipment, you don't need like a power cord going all the way, to mainland. This is something that you can put out there in the water and it will actually eventually, by the graceful movements of the sea gather the plastic which we have put there. It's a very elegant project as well.
£14 billion of garbage is dumped into the ocean every year. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch is made of plastic, garbage and chemical sludge that is trapped in the currents of the North Pacific Gyre. The garbage patch is estimated to be over 270,000 square miles, or roughly the size of Texas.
Every year, millions of tons of plastic enter the oceans, where it damages ecosystems, it damages economies, and it also enters up in the food chain, thereby potentially damaging us. And that's why it's extremely important to have these cleanup systems in all rivers and all oceans in the world. I was 16 years old and I was diving in Greece, and I realized I came across more plastic bags than fish, which was somewhat a disappointment. So I wondered, why can't we just clean it up? I quickly realized that the ocean is quite big, so if you would go after the plastic, it would take 79,000 years, would cost many billions of dollars. So then I wondered, why go after the plastic if the plastic can also come to you? And now we've been able to show that with this passive system, in 10 years' time, we can clean up half the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. The ocean cleanup, our goal is to develop technologies to rid the oceans of plastic, and eventually we want to have systems in all rivers and all oceans in the world.
The United Nations estimate that a staggering 110 million landmines have been laid out across more than 70 countries since the 1960s. Afghanistan alone is laden with an estimated 10 million mines. These landmines result in 15,000 to 20,000 deaths every year.
My brother and I would make wind-powered toys and would race them against the other children. We made many different designs using cheap materials that we found. Most people who live in Kabul will know somebody who has been hurt or killed by a landmine. After the loss of my father, my mother felt it would be too dangerous for me to stay, so she smuggled us out. After 4 years of traveling, I arrived in the Netherlands. I was accepted as a refugee. Now, as an adult, working as a product designer, I use my background to inspire my projects. It has been calculated that it costs about $1,200 to clear a single landmine. So I designed a prototype that I hope to realize in places like Afghanistan. The total cost of its material is about 40 euros. It moves using the power of the wind. When it rolls over an anti-personnel landmine, it's heavy enough to detonate the explosive. With each detonation, the mine caphon loses just 1 or 2 legs. Therefore, it could potentially destroy 3 to 4 landmines in one journey. My ideal scenario would be to provide it for local people as a tool to cheaply survey this danger in their own environment.
My favorite one is because I almost got killed by the jury for nominating it and for supporting it. And that was the Tesla Roadster. And we go, what do you mean, $150,000 toy, rich man's toy? How in the world does that in any way support our agenda or conform to our intentions of improving life on Earth? And I said, at the beginning of this century, there was something that 20 companies that made electric cars. They had a battery storage problem. Gas was cheaper, so the internal combustion engine won. So electric cars have been around for a long time. But more recently, the only attempts to introduce electric cars and get broad adoption has been the golf cart approach, you know, the pushing uphill, where you have this dinky little car and you buy it out of virtue with it. What these guys have done is they've flipped the model on their head and they've created a zoomy little sports car that becomes an aspirational model, and it goes from 0 to 60, you know, in 4.5 seconds. And everybody's going to look at that and say, that's an electric car? I got to have an electric car. So it created demand pull in a category that up till now has all been a virtue push. And it happened. It actually worked. And not only that, but Elon Musk has now closed the circle. He's got the electric car. Now he comes out with a battery to collect and store, because storage has always been the missing link, correct? And store the electricity from your roof such that you can now power your Tesla or whatever electric car. And he's closed the loop. So he gave tangible form to a valuable idea that pulled through a whole, not yet a mass market, but definitely heading that direction.
You know, we always say we got to do things better. Now, you know, that's easy said, but it's hard done. And I think one way of truly making things better is giving people options, opting for what we believe is truly better. And that, in many cases, has to start by making the existing visible. And the pig book was an amazing contribution to show actually a pig and how we use all the parts of the pig in all these products. And just getting us as citizens aware of how an amazing gift that pig is, what it enables us to do, was kind of a first step towards, maybe you call it consumer awareness, in terms of what we eat, what we wear, what we use. And I think that is the starting point for anybody as a citizen to start to make better decisions. Are we doing the right thing here? And are we using these resources wisely?
"39 million people in the world are blind. Over 80% of this blindness is preventable with access to eye care.
The vast majority of these avoidable blind people live in low-income countries, and this is where PEAK and PEAK Retina start from. PEAK is a toolkit that allows to do eye screening in the community, and PEAK Retina is the device that, in PEAK, images the back of the eye. Devices to look at the back of the eye are either very difficult to use or very expensive. PEAK is at the same time simple and inexpensive. All it is, it's a plastic clip that shines light at the back of the eye and allows the phone camera to visualize the back of the eye. It's been exciting to go to Africa and to see the device actually being used in the community. Now we are aiming to have this device used also here in high-income countries, here in the United Kingdom, for the screening of the population for eye disease.
My favorite is this. Alejandro Aravena from Chile, who runs a design studio called Elemental. But I think he's gone ways towards cracking the code as to low-cost housing. Now, the world over, you've got similar challenges, whether you're in Santiago, Chile, Sao Paulo, Delhi, Lagos. And the poorest of the poor, it seems that it kind of averages out that the kind of resources governments have to create houses, it kind of levels out at about $10,000 that most governments tend to allocate. The question is, what can you do with $10,000? Can you give dignity with $10,000?
With the Low Burden Chair project, the main priority was location. Behind me, you see the group of families in the situation before, meaning they live in a slum. What we're trying to do is that knowing that the location is so important because schools, transportation, jobs are in this part of the city, which is actually the richest part of the city. What we're looking for was to be able to find a design, able to pay for very expensive land, but keep all those networks. So much more important than an extra square meter of house was a better located square meter of land, which tends to be expensive. With a subsidy that is about $10,000 that is given to a poor family, then will become an owner of the house. We had to buy the land, provide the infrastructure, and build the houses. Instead of producing tiny units, we ask ourselves, why don't we think it's half of a good house? And we thought it was efficient to make the half that a family will never be able to achieve on its own. And then allow families to do their other half on their own, with their own timing, according to their own needs. To have a participatory design means to have families sitting on the table to help us decide what are we going to deliver from day one and what can be then left so that families themselves take care of that.
And it was just gorgeous. So the whole idea was to give them the good half house. And it's part of this thing that we don't have to be paternalistic. You know, people are industrious. They're able. We just need to help them across the threshold and do the difficult stuff for them. Love the idea. That was my favorite.
Every day, 8,000 newborn babies die from birth asphyxia. 300,000 mothers die each year during pregnancy and childbirth.
99% of these babies and women live in developing countries, with blood hemorrhage the most common cause of death in women.
I wanted to become a midwife because I have passion for life.
Every child should be able to have a happy birthday because he's going back home with his mom.
Our job is to help save lives. The power of the Natalie collection is that it enables people to do hands-on, practical, simple training and drive learning through experiences. Mama Natalie and Neo Natalie work very well together. Neo Natalie is a simulator made to facilitate training on newborn resuscitation to help babies breathe. Because they have 1 in 10 babies, wherever they are born in the world, will need help to start breathing. We talk about the golden minute. So healthcare providers should start ventilating that baby within 1 minute to give it the best possible chance to start breathing. And if you can practice that in a safe zone outside a clinical practice, you are better prepared when the real scenario happens. On Mama Natalie, it comes down to a bag that you put on your belly and you get simulated pregnant. The focus of the Mama Natalie is bleeding after birth, which is the leading cause of maternal mortality linked to childbirth. From a technical point of view, it's challenging to find the balance between realism in birth and like how close to the real body you should be. It's abstract in a way, they are not real bodies, and that makes it easy for people to focus and to relate to a different kind of situation in a professional way.
When they go out there, they will be alone with those mothers and they are expected to perform as they did on the simulator-based training that we are offering.
There is a big study from Tanzania covering about 80,000 births in 8 different hospitals, and it shows that after the implementation of the educational program Helping Babies Breathe, early newborn mortality has been reduced with 47%. The money we received as index winner helped initiate a program with the local midwifery organizations in Zambia and Malawi called 10,000 Happy Birthdays.
So the 10,000 Happy Birthdays is a project which focuses on helping mothers survive bleeding after birth and helping babies breathe.
And now 10,000 midwives has been trained within that program. And also that the International Confederation of Midwives are now scaling this up, and they are talking about 50,000 happy birthdays. Again, our role will be to help them and provide them with solutions, make them accessible, and also to learn from their experiences. Every 3 years, it's the International Confederation of Midwives, where you have all midwives coming together, and it's such a powerful community. Like, midwives are like my heroes. They are like, I don't know, it's like firefighters, or like this very action-minded, calm, focused people. These solutions are important to the world because they are helping other people do their job well. We are supporting these people, these organizations, with practical, hands-on solutions that makes their job easier.
The awards ceremony is a platform whereby we can celebrate exemplars, and we say to a whole new cohort of design thinkers and doers and reformers and activists that here represents best practice. Hey, what you got?
One of the greatest health challenges in developing countries is to get medical supplies to emergency situations. This is often due to challenging terrain and big gaps in the local infrastructure.
Zipline, plain and simple, is a service provider. It's a service provider to these government-run health systems. In Rwanda, it's the Ministry of Health and the leaders in the Ministry of Health that understand the challenges of their health system. Fundamentally, people are dying because of lack of access to these products like blood, vaccines, and even just basic pharmaceuticals. That's really where this started from. We met this young public health researcher in Tanzania who compiled this huge database of basically doctors texting him every time they didn't have what they needed to treat a patient, and then what the outcome was. And this list included, well, some of the obvious stuff like lack of blood leading to death and lack of topical antibiotic, the stuff we would buy at a gas station, leading 3 days later to a kid who came in originally with a minor scratch, basically requiring a section of his leg to be cut out. And that's really when it hit it for us. From there, we talked with these governments who were just like, look, we have the supplies, and the challenge is the logistics. How do we get all these products from our capitals out to these remote, well, hard to reach locations? People have been trying to solve the logistics problem in these remote areas of these countries with motorcycles and trucks for decades. And fundamentally, when you have dirt road infrastructure and a lack of bridges and 9 months of the year as a rainy season, it's just not possible to get a high reliability delivery network running. That's why it was sort of obvious to us to say, okay, let's literally leapfrog them, let's fly over these roads, but also do it on demand. So we maintain an inventory of medical supplies at our distribution center so that as orders come in, we have the inventory we need to fill those orders immediately. We pack the package with what they ordered, we put it in a zip, and we launch that zip to fly automatically out to that delivery site, where it drops the package from the air, turns around, flies back, and we get it ready to make its next delivery. Building out these road networks to solve this medical supply problem is a billions of dollar challenge. And we can solve that problem at dramatically lower cost, and we can solve it better than roads can solve it, because we can get deliveries out much faster than even you could do if you had the roads. Zipline, from a technology perspective, is a challenge of making a system that is both safe and operable at scale. How do you put these flights up every few minutes, all day long, rain or shine? How do you do that responsibly and safely for the communities you're operating around? That's really the fundamental challenge of Zipline. Since the first year, we've been flying essentially all day, every day at our test site. And we have been basically on the ground and in our test site figuring out how to break these zips every possible way so we can improve the design to the point where it's ready to operate reliably in all conditions, all day, every day for our customers. So we dropped the payload instead of landing because we think it's just a better delivery experience. When you receive a package from Zipline, it's just gliding almost silently over, it's quiet, it's sort of magical, and poof, this package comes down, you can literally catch it if you want to. So when the zips come back to our distribution center, they land on this system that we think of as a combination of an aircraft carrier and a bouncy castle. So they're flying by, and our system on the ground has a rope between two poles that will come up and grab the tail hook on the plane. The line will slow the plane down, and poof, the plane will land on a big bouncy castle mat. Far and away my best moment at Zipline was our first delivery. The first time that zip disappeared over the horizon, came back without its package, hearing from the doctor that we got the blood when they needed it, it turns out to save a 2-year-old's life. That was magical. In Rwanda, I love that the locals refer to our zips as sky ambulances. And it's sort of this sort of obvious description of what they're doing. And it's sort of important to kind of, well, make it clear that these are not spying on people, they're not hurting people, they're there to serve these doctors who are serving these patients. Rwanda has this really awesome mission of getting 12 million citizens within instant delivery of medical products. And Zipline makes that really easy, really cost effective, and, well, better than you could do it any other way. Zipline improves life in a really simple way. It gets these doctors who work in these remote areas of these countries the supplies they need to do their job.
The United Nations estimates that 4 billion people lack a reliable way to address their homes. Without an address, people are denied access to basic social and civic services, and they struggle to open bank accounts, register a birth, access electricity and water.
So I worked in the music business for 10 years, and every single place that we went to every day, whether trying to find the entrance to a stadium in the UK or a villa halfway up a mountain in Italy, everybody always got lost. So they were putting an address into their GPS device or sat-nav, but it wouldn't take people to the right place. So I wanted to make something really simple that covered the whole world to like a couple of meters of accuracy so that everybody could just always arrive in the right place. So What 3 Words is a global address system. We've divided the world into 57 trillion 3-meter squares, and we've named each square with 3 words from the dictionary. So by saying something like table, chair, spoon, I'm referring to one point in the world somewhere. So one of the things we were trying to do is take these GPS coordinates, but they're 16 digits and very complicated, and condense them into something far simpler for people to use, which is why we made a 3-word address, because people can remember and communicate 3 words. So the 3 words that we use are entirely random. They could be anything from tomato, eggplant, avocado, to spoon, table, chair. We basically just take words from the dictionary and put them in a random order, and that could be your front door's 3-word address. Having an address is essential for people to live. The UN says that 4 billion people live without an address, and actually 3/4 of countries do not have adequate address systems. It's a whole bigger problem that a lot of people actually think about. Now this means that people often can't vote, they can't register with their local government for services, you can't get like electricity connected to your house. Just imagine if you can't actually describe where you live to someone, you've got nothing to fill out on a form, you can't get a bank account or get a loan. In many ways, it's just very debilitating. I think the most powerful experience I've had with What 3 Words was a project we did in KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa. There's an NGO there called Gateway Health, and they are helping pregnant women get to the hospital when they're about to give birth. And what they've done is they've actually printed 3-word addresses on signs, which they give to each family's household in that village. And it means that when people call up, they know exactly the 3 words to tell over the phone and know that people will get to their house and find them very quickly. I think that's just amazingly empowering to know that for such a fundamental human right as to be given help in an emergency, just to watch that process happening and for people to be given their address has been really humbling. What 3 Words is helping people all over the world. Three-word addresses are helping people to find a water point in Kenya. They're being used by the Philippine Red Cross to coordinate where aid should be going to. They're being used to deliver mail in Tonga, to deliver e-commerce packages in the Middle East, and some really serious use cases with the UN, who are coordinating disaster relief efforts all over the world. But then through to people just coordinating where they're going to go for a run in the Himalayas, to rock climbers in Lebanon. There's an amazing set of ways that people are using three-word addresses. Our vision for What 3 Words is to be a global standard. We want people to be able to see those 3 words and know exactly what it means. They should be able to put them into any app. They should be able to use them with any service, to get a taxi, to register for something. And this is what we're striving for every day.
Imagine a trust-building technology with the potential to transform money, business, government, and society, making it possible for you to control your data, to verify digital information, and to confirm identity.
When I was growing up, I guess I was exposed to like math and computer programming a lot. The first thing I did is basically program games. Then I'd play it until I got bored. Then I'd program another one and then play that until I got bored and so forth.
For me, computers have always been a critical tool for designing, creating, and manifesting ideas. My interest in decentralized technology began when I was introduced to Bitcoin in 2010, and later, blockchain-based platforms for smart contracts like Ethereum.
At the time in 2013, people started realizing that you could use blockchain technology for a lot more applications than just a currency. And I spent a lot of time going around the world looking at the different projects that already existed. And eventually, I basically realized that the approach that they were taking, which was to make a new blockchain for every single application, was not enough. The idea behind decentralized applications is that you can have this different paradigm where instead of you talking to an application and basically you would be able to talk to people directly, any information that's just between the two of you would stay just between the two of you.
When people are able to gain more control over their own data, I believe that their quality of life would naturally improve with greater feelings of confidence, security, and personal power.
Almost 90% of large fish stocks are threatened by overfishing. A recent study suggests that if nothing changes in the way we fish today, we will run out of seafood by 2048.
So there were two main forces that were the impetus for me coming up with 3D ocean farming. The first was, my life has been one of ecological redemption. I worked in the Bering Sea, tearing up entire ecosystems with our trawls. It was really the height of industrialized fishing. And then the other one is, I just wanted to figure out, how do I spend my life working on the water? And I ended up here in Long Island Sound, and they were opening up fishing grounds for the first time in about 150 years. I started by growing oysters. And I did that for about 7 or 8 years. And then I was hit by climate change. Hurricane Irene, Hurricane Sandy came in 2 years in a row, wiping out 90% of my crop. So what I did was move my farm off bottom, started using the entire water column, and growing a whole mix of species in these small areas, really a polyculture of the sea. And it was just a way to both adapt to climate change, but also be part of the solution, right? Because all of our crops restore rather than deplete our oceans. Imagine an underwater garden with hurricane-proof anchors at the edges and then just ropes down below the surface. And from there, we're growing our kelp, our shellfish, and then next to that, we have our mussels in mussel socks, scallops in lantern nets. And then on the sea floor, we have oysters in oyster cages, and then clams down in the mud. We just try to figure out how many different species can we grow in a small area of ocean. We do two types of farming. We do food farming, and we do pollution farming. So the food farming goes in pristine waters that's traceable. We test the waters weekly. I mean, our kelp, our shellfish, is the most traceable food in the country. You wish your arugulas and kales were treated like our shellfish and seaweeds. But then we're also growing in polluted areas. And the goal there is to soak up the heavy metals, pull nitrogen, carbon out of the water column, and actually rebuild those reef systems. And that can be in urban centers, it could be anywhere, and that doesn't go into the food system. We can actually use that for biofuel. I think there have been two big challenges. One is just convincing fishermen to grow vegetables. I mean, it's kind of embarrassing, right? We chase things and we kill things. That's our role, and now suddenly we're like arugula farmers quietly farming the sea. But what I tell the fishermen like me is that, yes, we can no longer chase fish. We're gonna lose that part of our identity, and that's a really sad thing. But we get to keep this other core, which is we run our own boats, no bosses, we succeed and fail on our own terms, and we still get to capture that pride of helping feed the country. Those core elements of what it is to be a fisherman, we're able to keep. So what we want to do in this new climate economy is create jobs that bring meaning, that people are proud to do and to go to work. Like, let's create jobs that people can still write songs about. After I invented this type of farming, decided to open source it and just hand it over to fishing communities to let them take what I've invented and innovate it, make it better. And then we created GreenWave, which is a nonprofit which supports that process. So we've got a farmer training program, we do policy state to state, and we do R&D, solar-powered boats, things like that to stay ahead of the climate curve. And our hope, our dream is to have GreenWave reefs. So 25 to 50 farms in an area, a seafood hub and a hatchery in a low-income community, and then a ring of entrepreneurs innovating and creating value-added products. And then you take that GreenWave reef and replicate it every 200 miles, not only in the US, but all over the globe. We have requests to start farms in every coastal state in North America and 20 countries around the world. And from here, we're really hoping to weave new principles into the DNA of this industry. What we like to say is this is our chance to do food right. This is our chance to do agriculture right. I mean, we can make sure we protect rather than privatize our seeds. We can make sure that low-income folks have access and can build their own farms. And we can make sure our farms are actually part of the solution to addressing the climate crisis. So it's a really exciting time because our oceans are a blank slate. This is our chance to really design a food system from the bottom up.
Well, there's always lots of discussions because there's so many good nominees. The discussions were basically around the feasibility. So we spent quite a lot of time on finding out, if this really, is this a dream or is it actually feasible? But Index Award is not an award for complete, finished, huge things. And it can come from like one person or two young people. So I think that the discussions were, and of course, very positive because you also get charmed by the fact that such a great, huge idea with so much impact come from, not our generation, to put it that way. Yeah.
5 million people die from the big three: malaria, HIV, and tuberculosis every year. And at the same time, 1 billion people live with no infrastructure, no roads, and no electricity. For diagnosing the big three, centrifuges are needed to help isolate and detect low levels of infection, pathogens, and parasites.
One of the things that I'm passionate about and think a lot about is how do you make scientific tools available to a broader group of people. Payperfuge is something that a healthcare worker or a doctor or even a volunteer could be trained to use and be in the middle of nowhere and still provide a diagnostics that is actually essential. The idea really originates from the field. It was one of those trips I distinctly remember to Uganda. And on one of the visits to a primary healthcare clinic, I made a realization that a very important tool that's used in medical science, which is a centrifuge, was being used as a doorstop. And it was a little, it was funny 1 second, but quite ironic because we were in the middle of nowhere with patients with terrible infectious diseases needing a lot of help, and here is a scientific tool being used as a doorstop. And then later on, I realized that there was no electricity, neither in that hospital or the primary health center, nor in that entire region. And so having an electrical equipment that is important and necessary for diagnosis just sitting there means nothing. That was the spark of an idea to see, aha, we need to tackle this problem. We need to think about a completely different way to solve this problem. I've been interested in toys and wacky things all my life. It kind of stuck in my head that there are a lot of spinning toys out there. You know, as a kid, we've all played with some yo-yos. So I started thinking hard about yo-yos, asking a question, what is the fundamental limit that you can spin a yo-yo? How fast? But we actually figured out some of the physics of yo-yos to see, could we use them to spin biological samples? Now, that was not enough because yo-yos technically cannot go fast enough because of just laws of physics. We took a step back and then we started thinking about all possible toys that spin. We went through, spinning tops, these gyroscopes, and out of all that search, we stumbled upon this toy called the whirligig, which happens to be a very ancient toy, actually, in fact, the oldest toy in history of mankind. And one of the fascinating things about it was, although this is a toy that's sitting in front of our eyes, nobody actually understood how it worked. And much of the design work was actually done just purely doing pencil and paper and mathematics to be able to optimize this tool to say, aha, what is the fastest spinning object we could make with human power? And that's what led to Payperfuge, which now at this point is the world's fastest spinning object with human power. We have the world record for it. When this object is spinning in my hands, this is spinning around 120,000 RPMs. I mean, just imagine 120,000 times it's spinning per minute. So it's an incredibly fast spinning object, but it's seemingly or deceptively so simple. So I think the biggest challenge that we face sometimes is people's perception of what a tool, what does it mean to solve a problem, or what does it mean to build a tool? Initially, we were a little bit, just a little shy, to be able to share this tool. And of course, the moment we shared it with the healthcare workers and doctors, they immediately absorbed it. Their reactions and their eyes lit up once they understood the power of the tool and once we had showed them what it's capable of, because they actually understand far better the needs of their communities than we do. Thinking in constraints is an essential aspect of design, and if more people do that, I would be pretty happy. And I think one of the things that we often do with Frugal Science and tools is we share that tool and the know-how of the tool openly with people. When you empower people with these tools, but you don't dictate what they should do, they become creative. I grew up in India. I sat in government hospitals for half a day or a day just to get like a single prick of blood to be told what I have. And so I think I have empathy for these problems because I've faced them myself. So I think the biggest factor I feel in the context of design is experience the problem first. Because once you experience the problem, you truly understand what it means in that context. I don't think outside the box, I think in the box, because the box provides me constraints for rational solutions that can scale. It's very important for me for things that I do to actually scale and get in hands of people, because you can't solve a problem sitting in your office dreaming in a glass box. You really have to be in the problem yourself to feel the urge to crack it. It allowed us to build an extremely simple 20 cents of materials into an object that actually separates out blood samples, separate out disease samples. Within 30 seconds, we can separate plasma from whole blood. We can separate malaria parasites. We can separate many different types of pathogens that are found commonly in blood, urine, and stool. And then that separation allows us to be able to detect them using different sets of tools. So I kind of think myself as a designer for toothbrushes and pencils, something that is so simple, so available to people, but still solves an incredibly important need in society. So that's Payperfuge.
some of the best things that I'm seeing in design right now are in systems design, in service design. We're at this stage in our world where we, because of growth, because of the expansiveness of the economy, we're needing to fix, and we're needing to optimize, and we need to make better. So I think the exciting thing about designers and people going into this space right now is less about designing new stuff. It's more about optimizing the circumstance in which we find ourselves. And some of it involves design as repair. You know, some of that we don't get right first time. So what hacks can we do into the existing infrastructure to optimize it for current use?
At Index, we look at design through the lens of the Sustainable Development Goals. This is not a question of developing world or developed world. It's a question of how we actually design our world to be sustainable, to move forward, so we have a world in years and years to come.
We can't wait till 2049 to say, okay, now we have sustainability. We're crashing the planet, which means that we are in a moment of existential civilizational crisis. I see hardly any change. I see tinkering on the margins. Now, there are some countries like Denmark that are producing, 50% of its power from wind power, and Germany is 50% green power. Okay, that's one category. Now we have to have solar panels on every roof, and every new construction has to have green roof, batteries inside to power your electric car and to give power back to the grid, right? So that we get rid of all of the central power generation companies. Now, what I just described is about ripping out the whole structure, the whole ecosystem of the power generation industry. And we have to do that with every single industry that exists everywhere in the world. That's the job at hand. That's the biggest design job in the world, is redesigning how we inhabit the planet. For me, Index is because it's in Denmark. I don't think that Index could have happened in any other country. It embodies the ethos of Danish life and values.
Our job as designers and design thinkers is to make life more optimal.
What's the next thing that we do to be the cresting wave for the next thing that is most important in design to improve life?
Don't stop dreaming. Don't stop imagining things that you in the beginning think is not possible. Try to do developments which are close to your heart, because if they are most likely not hurting anybody.
This is what design can do. Design can make the world better.